What happens when the body starts attacking itself? Not metaphorically, but biologically. The immune system designed to protect the body suddenly begins fighting the body itself. This is the painful reality of autoimmune disease. And for her, this became everyday life. Now, from the outside, many people around her may not have understood the depth of her suffering because autoimmune illness often looks invisible, but inside, her body was exhausted, inflamed, overwhelmed, and slowly her entire identity began revolving around survival. Now imagine waking up every morning already tired, not normal tiredness, a deep exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. Even brushing her teeth became difficult. Holding her arm up felt heavy. Walking hurt. Her joints swelled. Pain moved through her body constantly. Sometimes she lacked enough. Sometimes she lacked enough strength even to cook dinner. Now think about what chronic illness does psychologically. At first, a person fights. They search for solutions, treatment, doctors, hope. But over time, when symptoms repeat daily, the nervous system begins emotionally memorizing illness. Now, this is important. The body does not only memorize trauma, it also memorizes emotional state. Now, Jennifer's body was repeatedly experiencing pain, fatigue, fear, uncertainty, hopelessness, again and again and again. Now, eventually, the nervous system starts identifying with illness itself. Now, the body begins expecting suffering. Now, the mind begins predicting limitation. Now, identity changes. And this is one of the hardest part of chronic illness because eventually the person no longer says, I have symptoms. They begin feeling, I am broken. Now, her body carried multiple diagnoses, autoimmune disorders, digestive disorders, asthma, kidney issue, arthritis, vertigo, inflammation everywhere. And despite seeing specialists, nothing truly restored her health. Now, this is where many people emotionally collapse because uncertainty itself creates survival stress. The body becomes trapped between fear of symptoms, fear of the future, fear of deterioration. Now, survival becomes the emotional baseline, and this matters biologically because chronic survival chemistry affects the immune system deeply. Now think about this carefully. The body was never designed to remain in emergency mode continuously. Stress hormones influence inflammation, immune signaling, digestion, repair, recovery. Now if survival becomes chronic, the body struggles to restore balance. Now this does not mean autoimmune diseases is imaginary. Not at all. The suffering is real, the symptoms are real, the inflammation is real, but emotional survival may intensify biological dysfunction far more than we realize. Now, she described something heartbreaking. She felt like she was failing as a mother. Imagine that emotionally, not because she lacked love, but because she lacked energy. Now, emotional guilt entered the nervous system too, and guilt itself is exhausting. Now, her body continued collapsing physically. She lost weight, struggled to walk, experienced nerve swelling. Sometimes even simple tasks became painful. Now, eventually, many people in this situation begin emotionally rehearsing illness constantly, thinking about systems, thinking about symptoms, expecting symptoms, monitoring symptoms, fearing symptoms, and unknowingly, the nervous system strengthens the identity of illness further. Now, this is where her story shifted. Not instantly, not magically, not gradually. Her husband kept searching for alternatives, searching for possibilities, and eventually she attended a workshop focused on meditation, elevated emotions, and nervous system transformation. Now, initially, nothing dramatic happened, but she started experiencing the small changes. A little more energy, a little more movement, a little more hope. Now, this is important. Hope itself changes biology because hopelessness signals survival, but possibility signals openness. Now, she committed deeply to the process, daily meditation, daily emotional practice, daily reconditioning. And something fascinating began happening. Instead of emotionally rehearsing illness every day, she began emotionally rehearsing health. Now, this is a major shift because the brain does not only respond to external reality, it also responds to internally created emotional experiences. Now, during meditation, she imagined herself healthy, walking freely, breathing freely, feeling strong, feeling alive, and emotionally, she fully entered those experiences. Now, think about this neurologically. The brain starts responding to emotionally vivid internal experiences, almost as if they are real. Now, if survival emotions affect biology, why could not elevated emotions also affect biology? Now, over time, our emotional state began changing. More joy, more energy, more possibility, more freedom, and slowly her body responded differently too. Now, this is where things became extraordinary. She started tolerating foods that previously caused severe reactions. Her asthma symptoms improved, her energy increased dramatically. She started walking long distances, training physically, feeling alive again. Now, this story is not simply about symptoms improving, it is about identity changing. Because healing often requires a new emotional state, a new relationship with the body, a new relationship with possibility. Now, understand this carefully. The body listens constantly to fear, to hopelessness, to stress, to emotional repetition. And over time, those repeated emotional states become biological. Now, she stopped emotionally living inside illness every day, and instead, she repeatedly practiced a different emotional future. Now, this does not mean healing is pretending. It means the nervous system begins learning a new state, safety instead of survival, expansion instead of contraction, coherence instead of chronic stress. Now, perhaps one of the deepest truths is healing is this. The body often follows the emotional state we repeatedly live in. And if survival becomes chronic, the body changes. But maybe if elevated emotional states become chronic too, the body can change again. Now, Jennifer's story reminds us of something powerful. The human body is not only chemical, it is emotional, neurological, energetic, adaptive, and sometimes healing begins when the body finally experiences a future different from the past it has memorized for years.